Everyone seems to love wild horses, even more so in North America, where wild horses are known as mustangs. Whether it's in a song, a story, a movie, or a TV show, wild horses have always held an iconic spot in people's hearts and minds. And today, we're going to go for a ride and see what's weird about wild horses on today's episode of 5 Weird Things. Welcome to the channel. I have always been a curious person, and now I get to research any subject I can think of and share it with you. But before we move on, I once lost control and it was a tamed horse, but it threw me down an entire hill. That's my horse story. Now tell me your horse story down in the comments. Anything involving a wild horse or at least a horse. Well, now that that's out of the way, the things we should all know. A wild horse is defined as a non-domesticated feral horse running wild. Anywhere else in the world, they're known as wild horses. But in North America, they're known as mustangs. Now, the name Mustang comes from the Spanish word mosteño or manstenco, meaning wild or stray. Different government agencies claim there are wildly different numbers of Mustangs in the U.S. According to the Journal of Wildlife Management, estimates the populations to be around 300,000 nationwide. The Bureau of Land Management, BLM, claims it's more like 64,000. So nobody's really sure, and it's quite a big range. Weird thing number 5. This 1928 novel is set in the American Southwest and tells the story of a group of wild horses on a mesa. The novel explores the conflict between ranchers who view the horses as a threat to their ranches and resources and those that want to preserve the wild herds. The love story, and Zane Grey books always have one, was between a rancher and one of the conservationists, the woman trying to save the wild horses. Kind of like a Romeo and Juliet Western style, but with horses. As with all Zane Grey books, the in-depth descriptions were heavily praised by all the critics. Weird thing number 4. Wild Horses by the Rolling Stones. The song Wild Horses by the Rolling Stones is one of the band's most iconic and enduring ballads. And for me, it was a big change-up because they were always big-time rock and roll, and here's this very kind of a painful song. It was written by Mick Jagger and Keith Richards, was released on their '71 album Sticky Fingers. Now, the song is a classic example of the band's ability to blend rock and country elements, creating a timeless and emotionally charged composition. The story behind Wild Horses is not confirmed by the band, but it is often associated with the tumultuous relationship between Mick Jagger and Marianne Faithfull, Jagger's girlfriend at the time. The song is believed to reflect the emotional strain and turmoil in their relationship in the 1960s. Weird thing number 3. Horses originally came from North America. So wild horses evolved and grew on the North American continent millions of years ago. During glacial periods, when the sea level would drop, they would move back and forth across the Bering Land Bridge into Siberia. Horses then went locally, North America, extinct 12,000 years ago. But they were not globally extinct. In fact, they thrived in Asia and were eventually domesticated 6,000 years ago. Domestic horses spread throughout Asia and Europe, breeding with wild mares along the way. And when Europeans came back to North America with their horses in the 1500s, they were introducing a native species back into its place of origin. Weird thing number 2. Wild horse attacks. Wild horse attacks on humans, extremely rare. Doesn't mean it never happens. Wild horses are not aggressive by nature, but don't forget that a wild horse is still wild. There are a lot of differences from a domesticated horse and a wild horse. Not just the fact that one's been ridden before. Think of it as a 1,000-pound wild animal that you might be provoking. 7 different rules for dealing with wild horses. Maintain a safe distance. 40 feet is considered safe. And if that seems like a long distance, think about how fast these animals can move. Rule number 2, do not startle them. They weigh 1,000 pounds. They run really fast. Do the math here. Rule number 3, respect their space. They are very territorial. Rule number 4, be mindful of foals. This is basic wilderness advice and really goes for any animal you run into in the wild. Avoid wild animal babies. Mothers can react in a savage fashion if they feel their child is threatened. Rule number 5, do not chase or harass. Cornered animals react dangerously and unpredictably, and you have no idea what a corner might look like to them. Number 6, keep dogs leashed. You may love your dog, but watching it get stomped to death because you didn't know any better is still your fault. Rule number 7, avoid feeding. You might be nice, but not all humans are. Don't get them used to being fed just because you want a selfie for the gram. The takeaway from all this, 1,000 pounds, runs real fast. And finally, weird thing number 1. Wild horses can thrive anywhere. Much like the human race, you will find horses thriving, but they do it in a much more natural way. Evolution from generation to generation. In desert regions such as the southwestern United States or the Sahara Desert, wild horses have adapted to extreme heat and limited water resources. They often develop efficient water-conserving behaviors for the herd, and they can travel long distances in search of water. They can even dig for water. They have a keen nose for water. Their coats tend to be shorter and lighter in order to reflect sunlight and heat. Now, in temperate grasslands and plains like the American prairies, wild horses rely on grasses, and they've adapted to variable weather patterns. They grow thick winter coats to withstand the cold temperatures. Their herding behavior has developed differently to provide protection from predators, and instinctively, mares and foals stay near the inside, more agile and larger males on the outside. Now, in forested regions such as parts of Europe and Asia, wild horses adapt to a mix of forests, meadows, and water sources. They may have more varied diets, including grasses and aquatic plants. Their behavior may involve navigating through densely wooded areas. Thus, a highly evolved sense of direction has been found. Wild horses can also be found in mountainous areas, like the Pryor Mountains in the United States. They adapt to steep terrain, harsh winters, and limited forage. In winter, they develop a seasonal migration to lower elevations for better forage. In coastal regions and on islands, wild horses often consume salt-tolerant plants and adapt to the challenges of coastal living. They may have very sturdy hooves, much more sturdier than normal, that are suitable for traversing sandy or rocky coastal terrain. In some wild horse populations, like the Yakutian horse in Siberia, inhabit an Arctic tundra environment. They've developed thick winter coats and dense fat layers, kind of like seals, and their behaviors for staying warm, frigid temperatures have evolved. In wetland and marsh conditions, wild horses feed on aquatic plants and have adaptations for traversing muddy terrain. Their hooves are much broader to distribute their weight on soft ground. Now, these adaptations showcase the remarkable resilience and versatility of wild horses. They have evolved to thrive in a wide range of climate zones, utilizing diverse forage sources, developing varying coat types, and exhibiting different behaviors as they adjust to the challenges and opportunities presented by their specific environment. Well, that's it for today's episode. This one was fascinating to research. Now, I realize you can't buy a wild horse. That kind of takes away the whole idea of a wild horse, but I kind of want one anyway. Now, let me know if I missed anything, messed up anything, or if you got an idea for a video. Let me know in the comments. Take care. Make it a great day.